Evening, folks. How you doing tonight? CP3 live from the lab, coming at you on a special night Sports on the Hill podcast. Coming to you live from the lab with a special guest, Washington football team senior vice president of media, Miss Julie Donaldson. How are you doing tonight, Miss Donaldson?
Great. Glad to be here. Season is up and running. Glad to see that. Hopefully, we get a few more wins to celebrate. It's always different after a victory. So we got to put this loss behind us and look forward to the Browns.
Yeah, definitely. It was a disappointing loss. I say, I didn't see what I wanted to see. I was going to get into it. I guess we can get into it a little bit. I wasn't really going to get into the football stuff. My only observation that I had, I want to get your take on this, is that with Scott Turner so far, I haven't seen him like tailoring to have some strength, which is like moving the pocket, misdirection, and him throwing the ball on the run. We've seen him have success with him doing that in the past. Do you think that they'll start incorporating some of that more into the offense?
Yeah, I haven't had the opportunity to talk to Turner. Usually, I talk with him and Ron Rivera ahead of each game that they have going into. So I wasn't able to talk to them today, but I do know that they're having conversations about how they can get Dwayne going earlier in the game as opposed to the second half. I know Coach wanted to be able to see him run a few more bootlegs, run a few more RPOs to try and help him out a little bit. So we'll see what they do come up with. But yeah, I mean that's the trick is Dwayne seems to settle down into the game, and when they go a little bit, faster, more up tempo, he seems to thrive a little bit better in those series. So hopefully we can get that going sooner.
Definitely, definitely. I've also noticed that also. But I really want to get into too many football questions. I'm gonna get into some of the questions that was on my mind with you having this position. And just can you give us a little background and what brought you into the position with the franchise?
Well, I mean, I've been in this market for 10 years. The last few seasons, I've done the pre and post game shows for them on NBC Sports Washington. But I've been doing shows on this team since I got here. And again, that was 10 years ago. So, I've been very familiar with the franchise, with the fan base, with everything about it. And, it came up so quickly and very sudden. It was unexpected. I was at the gym and I got a phone call that said, "Hey, we have an opportunity for you and we want you to hear us out." And I'm like thinking, okay, what's going on here? It came under, unfortunately bad circumstances with everything that was going on with the Washington Post article and with my predecessor, unfortunately being involved in all of that. But here's the thing is, it has created an opportunity for myself and I am, making the most of it. It's not something I really saw myself doing of, being in a broadcast booth. And so when they first presented the idea to me, I thought they were a little crazy. But now that I'm settled in and did decide that it was the right job for me, it's been really cool. And on many levels, it's kind of perfectly fitting to a lot of things that I wanted to do and to what I've already done. And hopefully into the future of what I will be able to do. So it's been a wild ride basically over the past few months.
Definitely. That goes into one of the other questions I had. Did you ever see yourself in a role like this for an NFL franchise and definitely being the first woman in the NFL to ever take this role? Did you ever, see yourself, when you were, aspiring in your career that you would be in this position right
No, not at all. I mean, again, when they first presented to me, I thought it was crazy. And, I was talking John Keim of ESPN. He was actually with us in the booth because of COVID. We're not allowed to travel. So we're having to call the games from FedEx Field when they're in Arizona, when they'll be in Cleveland for all of them. We're going to be at FedEx Field.
now?
And, he was going through it all. And then afterwards, he goes, I have to tell you this as an afterthought. I realize you're the first woman to do this on a full-time basis. And, I said, it's not lost on me the magnitude of that, but I love the fact that that was one of the last things he thought of. Because it should just be about the job that I'm doing and that it be a good job that I'm doing, and I will grow in it. I will get better. I mean, I've never done this before. It wasn't something when I was a little girl, I dreamed about, or when you're early on in your profession, I dreamed about telling stories and I loved being at events. I loved being around, the players and the fans and all that. So in all honesty, I think that's the cool thing about life is you have a big dream. And as you get further into it, I think sometimes God goes, no, bigger, and here I find myself in this situation and the opportunity to, pave a way for women that do have that as the dream and say, you know what, it shouldn't be on whether you're male or female. It just depends on who's the best journalist and the best at what they do to be there. That's what I want it to be at the end of the day. So, it fits right along the lines of everything I do love to do. I just didn't see it playing out in this facet.
Definitely, that's definitely a valid point. You can open doors for other folks
Mhm.
and other women in a position that want to aspire to do that didn't think they could be in that position. And I know it's definitely giving a push and a boost to some of the young ladies out here seeing you in this role. And that's kind of what I go into the next question. But the difference of being in a radio booth and being an executive, and now with so much coverage that you do now with live streams and the show you do on NBC Sports. So how do you balance all of that, and what's the difference between just doing the radio booth stuff and now incorporating that along with the executive stuff also?
Yeah, fantastic question. I haven't figured it out yet. I don't think there's a balance at all in my life at the moment. And I usually preach that. And nothing's ever 50-50, in life. I don't think that that's ever how anything goes. But I do believe there has to be some sort of a mix between your work life, your home life, and your relationships, whatever that is, and however it works for you. Right now, it's very predominant work. In fact, that's almost all it is. I was at dinner with my friend, and it's like I only had time for 3 sips and 2 bites, and I'm like, all right, gotta go. That's just how it is. But that was better than nothing. And people in my life that support me understand that, and they understand the magnitude of this job, the responsibility that comes with it. And as you mentioned, like the senior vice president role, there's a lot that comes with that. And we're charged with changing a culture. And right next to Jason Wright, our new team president, like there's a long list we went over today of things and priorities that need to be accomplished, need to be addressed. And it takes a lot of work. Then the television shows, we are doing 17 shows a week, 17 of them. Now, I'm not on all of them, but I'm in charge of making sure that the content's right, that the people are right, that it's getting out there right, that the quality is good. Just because there's 17 doesn't mean we can slack off on the quality either. So,
Yeah,
there are a lot of balls in the air to figure out, but I'm really enjoying every aspect of it, though.
definitely. Yeah, I was doing 4 and 5 shows a week. You're talking about 17. I could only imagine how everything that goes into it with the production value, like you say, the
Mhm.
content, and making sure everybody's on the same page. Yeah, that's a that's a lot. That's a lot on your plate right there. Um, Being a Florida girl, do you think that that's contributed to you with your love of sports and your love of broadcasting in sports?
Uh, you know, I mean, I don't know if it so much comes from Florida. Although I will say this, because I was in Florida, that football tends to be the first love. It tends to
Yeah.
be, the first thing that we go to. I mean, in all honesty, when I started covering hockey, it was very foreign to me. I just was like, what is this icing? Like, it's freaking cold in here.
Oh,
Um, but my parents are from Michigan. They just didn't like the cold weather. So they moved south and saved me of that. Uh, but yeah, it's more natural for football, just growing up around it, the love for it, the passion for it, and everything that comes around to that. So, it can be played year round outdoors too. It's not like, it gets limited at all either because of the weather. So, I enjoy Florida. I don't really care to go back and live there. It's more like in the middle of winter, let me go vacation. And then that's it though. I really enjoy the mid-Atlantic here. I love the weather. I love when it gets to be fall. I even really actually enjoy winter. Not that I want Boston winter because I've lived in Boston and that's the other extreme. I like the balance.
yeah, it is a nice balance. When we do get snow, it's not like that Boston, upstate New York snow. Very true. Let's see. Next question we have for you. Um, what are some of the things that you expect going forward that you plan to implement with this team in this new role that you're in and the influence that you have with this
Well, one of the big things that we really want to stress is, that we want to be transparent and we want to communicate in ways that I don't believe this franchise really communicated with before. Cause, since I spent so many years as a reporter covering this team, they didn't necessarily always be open with the media. Or even with fans and what was going on. They just kind of, they would wait to put out the press release and then they wouldn't necessarily comment on whatever it was. And we're really changing that. And it started with head coach Ron Rivera. He said, we want to be the place where people come and see the news. And even before I knew that, it's the first thing I approached our PR with. I said, we should be the source for that. We shouldn't have to wait and let other people dictate whatever story they want and translate it however they want to translate it. I said we should be able to one that puts the facts out there, and then they can go do what they want. But at least they know where it's straight and what's right and what's wrong with the story that we're putting out. So there, it doesn't get lost in confusion, or people aren't left to, in the absence of information, people can create any storyline that they want. So we don't want it to be absent of information. So, I think that's something that I want to build that trust back with the fan base, with the media outlets, and really kind of be the source of everything you want to know about this team. Come to us. We'll have that for you. So that's something I want to work on. We also want to just really reconnect with the fan base and let them know that we're hearing them, we're creating content for them. And we want them, especially during COVID, where you can't be at the games, you can't be at the rallies, you can't be tailgating, to try and connect this team with them as best as possible. And certainly, hopefully, we have a lot of wins to celebrate in the next few years as well.
Yeah, definitely know winning cures all. Once you start winning,
Right?
and all the other stuff gets hushed up in the process. Excuse me, but I guess I'll have to ask this question because it's been a real divider with the fans, with the upcoming name change, with the stuff that's going on with Washington football team, and going through the process of getting a new name, new branding, and new trademarks and all of that. There's a big divide in Washington football team fan base. How is the organization, excuse me, going to try to bridge the gap with some of the folks that stuck with the heritage of the last name and are reluctant to follow the team with the new name and the new things that's going on?
Yeah, it's challenging. And I think we understand that. And because I, came from the other side, and look, you always root for the team you cover. I've been in Miami, New York City, and Boston, and I rooted for those teams to do well just because it's good for business. But I've been here for 10 years. I want this team to do well. I support this team. And of course, especially now, because I can use the we with it. And that's kind of cool and different in its own right. But, I know the fan base, and, I've heard in year after year in and year out of the high hopes, of the fresh starts, of the new coaches and players being brought in, and all that it represents and means. And now we're saying, okay, we're transitioning into something totally different. And, it's a hard ask on top of everything else that fans have gone through, of the disappointments of players not playing out, of the postseason not happening. So, I think if to get where we need to go, though, it was necessary. Unfortunately, the name became divisive, and that's just not where we can be in today's society. I know that fans that follow this team and are passionate about this team, that word was never disrespectful to them. It was a word of pride. It was a word of honor. You were proud of that. And, it's a hard ask, but I do hope that at least going forward, the fan base will stay with us and understand that this is the climate that we're in. It's the culture that we're in, and it's still the same team. It's still the burgundy and gold, and the players are still out there playing for you. So hopefully you come along the process, and I don't know how long it will take to get a name. I don't, because I don't know how long it's going to take to get it right. And that's the last thing this team wants to do is to come up with a name that's going to be, further dividing the fan base. We want to do something that's going to bring everybody together.
Definitely, that's very very good to hear because this fan base definitely needs to be brought together because it's been so divided for so long, and now with the name change, it's just added another dividing point for this fan base. But hopefully, like you said, we can get it right, get something that everyone can appreciate and enjoy and go forward. I say the same thing. It's the same franchise, just a different team. I'm not really, caught up with the name change. I mean, I do have the old logo tattooed on me, so that's always going to be a part of me. Born and raised, ex Redskins fan, if you want to call it. So it's just a sticky issue right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it may be for a little while, but again, hopefully with the new direction and as like the new era comes in, it becomes something that's not as painful as it kind of is right now. And I feel the anger. I got all the fans coming at me, and there's a lot of anger too, and I get that. I really do. We get that, and so we're just trying to make it as pain-free as possible because it is painful. We get that, and we the emotions are very real. I'm not denying that either. So, we're just trying to be as sensitive to the fans as possible, but it is something that had to happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with watching football team right now. I don't have a problem with that. It's just hard remembering to say it when you on the air. I've had a couple of slip ups with the R words when I've been broadcasting, so that's been the hardest part for me trying to make sure I say the right team name now. But we mentioned Ron Rivera. I was when they first hired him, I wasn't really sure. I looked into his background and really looked into him and saw his career and what he's done coaching and playing. And I definitely feel like him and Jack Del Rio are the right coaches in this franchise right now where they are to take us to the next level and build back respectability. Where do you see this team headed under their leadership?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I believe that Ron Rivera is the right coach for this, especially given everything that's happened since he got here with COVID, with the social injustice, with the name change. He's just as steady as they come. And even now with him having to deal with his cancer diagnosis and going through treatment, I mean, the man's shoulders are pretty broad and he's got a very steady hand and a steady way of delivering and leading. And the players are believing and following behind him. Jack Del Rio is a very capable coach, 9 years as a head coach himself. Scott Tinner is up and coming as an offensive coordinator and hopefully gets the offense going in the right direction. So, I like the direction they're going in. And I know I get yelled at by saying, it's going to take probably a little bit of patience because his coach says very realistically, this is not an overnight, you know, click your fingers and we're off in the right direction. It's going to take probably a good year before they can really get things going the way that they want them to, especially on offense, because, I don't tell you, we're missing a lot of pieces there. Even on defense, we're missing some key players that we really need, even though the front seven, that are really stout. So, it is going to take a little bit of time. I know fans, especially with the name change, they are tired of waiting. They're tired of taking time. But I do like the direction that we're going in. And in all honesty, if it was, I don't know what other coach they would have brought in, but Ron Rivera is a big reason why I decided to take this job because I believe in his moral compass. I believe in his leadership, and he's easy to get behind.
Wow, that's good to know. I had no idea that weighed into your decision because he's definitely a stand-up guy. Like I said, I did some research and looked into him once they hired him, and yeah, everyone, no one has anything bad to say about him. And said he's
Mhm.
definitely a stand-up guy. He's a man of his word, responsibility, accountability, which are all things this franchise desperately needs going forward.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and he's, the thing that you also get from him is what play his past players and current players say is he knows how to get the best out of the players. He knows what their strengths are and to put them in positions to play to those strengths. So I think that could be encouraging as well.
Definitely, definitely. Just a couple more questions. We know you're short on time. What is the most important culture change that you want to make on this franchise going forward that you felt was something that you really wanted to address and leave your mark on with this franchise?
Accountability, respect, and to see people. I think those are important. I think, people have to know that the work that they're putting in is going to be seen because in this business, people are working crazy hours, long days, no days off. I mean, I don't know when I'll probably get the next day off. And that goes for my staff too. It's very hard to find that time during the middle of the season. That's just what we're in this for is because we're here because we're passionate. But I want anybody that works for this franchise to know that their work is appreciated, it's seen, and hopefully will be rewarded as well. And I think a part of that is you have to have accountability. So we know what your job title is, and you can hold those that are working for you accountable, and those that are working for you can hold the leadership accountable. It's a two-way street on this, and I think that's really important for everybody to know that you have a job. We're expecting you to do that job, and if it's not done the right way, we're going to have a conversation about that on how we can get it to the standards and the expectations of what we want, but that's going to be very clear delivery. So you're not going to be confused on what that is. And also I think respect, when you have respect to the people you work for and when you trust the people that you work with, that goes a long ways. And that's something that hasn't obviously existed here in the past. Otherwise we wouldn't be having these problems that unfortunately were there. And look, we believe that they've all been addressed, and a lot of that was, all before hopefully I was here. But if there is a problem, we're going to hold those people accountable, and they may not be here, if that still exists, because it's not going to be something that I tolerate. Man or female cannot be mistreated anywhere in life. There's just no room for that. And so I think a lot of that just comes with respect and mutual respect, no matter what your position is, no matter what your title is, no matter what department you work in.
Totally agree. I've been in some situations that the culture wasn't healthy either. So you have to get those things addressed, hold people accountable, and respect everyone in the work environment because that's what they're there to do. But it's good to hear that positive things are happening at the park. I know I'm encouraged after all the reports and stuff that was coming out of some of the stuff that was going on over the past few years or decades or however far you want to go back. But it's good to see that they're changing things, they're bringing diversity into the organization, and putting people in places that they normally wouldn't be in, and trying different things, which is what you have to do sometimes, especially when you have the unfortunate track record of the last couple of decades of not being a successful franchise. It's it's good to see that. Let's see, Robbie. I think he's ready to rock and roll. He has a couple of fan questions before we get you out of here. Robbie, you ready to get on screen and get a couple of these questions in?
I
Good.
am. I am. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for doing this. It's
Of
been
course.
fantastic to hear some of this insight. I've been a big fan of yours for 10 years. I've been a big fan of back in the Caps days and in the Washington football team days. So I really appreciate it. And a lot of the fans that are responding right now are thanking you for opening up that fan experience, and they feel like they are getting closer. Some of the things that you were just talking about that you were hoping to see. So I'm happy to see that they. Jason said that he really appreciates your time taking to interact with fans on so many different avenues and improving the fan experience. It goes a long way. Keep up the good work. And then a lot of questions about some of the stuff that you were just addressing, so I'm not going to rehash that, but I thought that it's great. Anna Knox, who does our hockey coverage and during our hockey talk, wanted to know who you liked, admire as an athlete, male and female, from your perspective.
Right now, the top of my head right now of an athlete. Um, gosh, male or yeeks. I always get put on the spot for these.
I
You know,
know.
let me just twist it a little bit. How's
Yeah,
that?
go
Because
for it.
that's what
Go
we do
for
in
it.
this business. Because the first thing that comes to my head, and just because I was just having a conversation with her, is like Doris Burke. And the reason I say her too is because you talk about myself being the first female in the booth on a regular basis, a full-time basis. She's been calling games for such a long time, but she's going to be the first female that's going to call, calling the NBA playoffs. And I just respect her work, and I know men that respect her work. And you don't look and say there's a female. You go and you say that's a freaking darn good, person calling those games. And so I'm glad to see her be able to get her, to get that respect and to be able to have that big moment, which she's worked for and she deserves, So, yeah, I know that's probably not the athlete, but that's just kind of
No,
right there at the top
no,
of
that's
my head.
that's
So.
exciting. I also had a personal question. What's it like doing radio now versus TV? Do you find that very different, or how do you sort of because I know you do some of the TV with the Facebook Live stuff, but I know that radio is obviously very different.
Yeah, it is a lot different. But it's just still talking and communicating. And in all honesty, it offers you to a little more conversational tone, kind of the way that you approach it. I'm having to learn, a lot, like all these reads they keep giving me. We stream the game as well. So you can
Right.
tune in and watch us if you go to the website to our second screen.
Oh, cool.
You'll see them handing me live drop-in reads and having to get the out. So there's little nuances I'm having to learn, and the pacing obviously is a little bit different. But you're still telling stories. You're still putting on a performance, and you still have a hot mic.
Right.
It's just not as it's structured in a very different way. So.
You got to paint the picture in a bit of a different way because they don't have the
Mhm.
visual to go with it, and you've got to kind of explain stuff away. And then one last question that we had from Kevin Sinclair. He talked about rivalries, going back to the Florida question. He knows that you really liked University of Florida and that Florida State rivalry, right? How does that rivalry compare to the Cowboys Washington football team rivalry in your mind? Sort of in your history of
Yeah.
rivalries.
Well, it's equal hate, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, growing up in Jacksonville, Florida, you were one or the other. And, we didn't at the time when growing up for first of my childhood, aging myself, the Jags weren't there. So we didn't have the pro team yet.
Right.
So you were either Florida or Florida State. And the rivalry was always good too, because the games were competitive. We'd go back and forth. So to me, like they'd say, oh, my sister went to Florida State, and so I have to have like this much tolerance for them, in all honesty. Otherwise, there's zero tolerance. But people think, when you're out of state here, they go, oh, well, you're from Florida. Florida's out, you can root for Florida State because you're from Florida. I said, no, heck no. No. I can't do that. You know, I'd rather root for Alabama than Florida State.
Right.
So it still has, you know, so I get it. I get the passionate fan base. I get the living and the dying with, you know, who has the bragging rights. And it's all about beat Florida State because that was always our Thanksgiving game as well. Same as the Cowboys. So Thanksgiving, you know, mark it down. We went on a trip and that was, you know, must watch TV. Never missed it.
Yeah, that's crazy. It'll be a fun game to call for sure. That Cowboys Washington football team game in Dallas.
I wish we would be in Dallas, but next year and the years
next
after
year.
that, maybe.
Right,
So.
right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for being so open and honest and going through all these issues. I know that the fans really appreciate it, and we really do too. And I hope that we can do something like this again in the future for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. So.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. You have a good night.
All right, you too.